Hi, and welcome to ECPG Live. My name is Tana, and this episode is on family recovery. Before we bring on our guest, I just want to remind you that you can view resources and links and information for this episode already compiled for you on the blog page. And if there's any more resources shared while we're chatting, then we can add them afterward. And of course, you can leave comments for us if you would like. We always like to see those. So we are having on our show today a woman by the name of Beverly Buncher. She is a national specialist on family recovery. What I mean by family recovery is that when addiction is present in a home, it's not just affecting one person, it affects the whole family, and the family hurts and the family recovers as well. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's welcome our guest today. Hello, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for making the time for us in your time zone. And do you mind telling our viewers a little bit more about you,
Sure.
what you do, anything else you'd like them to know?
So my name is Beverly Buncher, as Tana said, and I am the founder and director of the Be a Loving Mirror Institute. It's BALM for short. We have the BALM family programs and the BALM Training Institute for Family Recovery Services, where people have professional training to become life coaches specializing in family recovery. So that's what I do. I'm an author. I wrote the book BALM, The Loving Path to Family Recovery, and I'm in the middle of my second book right now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And you have been doing this work for how long now?
I became a life coach in 2008 and felt called to work with families. So since 14 years.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Before we get more into the whole family recovery journey, can you tell us a little bit about how your approach, the BALM approach, started?
Sure. Well, you know, I was a person who was always a potential member of family recovery. It's like I came in the world to recover as a family member. And I really always found wonderful guys who just so happened to have a use disorder, a mental health challenge, an SUD, an AUD, gambling, whatever it was. They had their challenges. And I have to admit, I have mine too. I'm a recovering food addict. And what can I tell you? I mean, I met this wonderful guy and he just swept me off my feet. And I said to him, I can't date you. I only date people who work the 12 steps. And he said, I totally understand. And the next morning he called me up on the phone and he said, I was up all night. I read the entire big book. And I want you to know that I am now recovered. Because the night before when I asked him, you know, are you recovered? He said, no, crazy as ever. And I really, really like this guy. We started to date. People in the program in Al-Anon told me I must have very low self-esteem. I said, so what else is new? I knew I had low self-esteem, and that didn't mean that the people that I loved weren't worthy of being loved, or that I wasn't worthy of being loved. We just had our work cut out for us, and we found each other. And so my husband at that time, my boyfriend, we found each other. We loved each other. And he was engaged in active addiction, and I was devastated, really devastated. But I was in Al-Anon, so I knew that I could fix this. I was sure of it. And I said, this will be fine. I can marry a person in those days. I'm going to use the words we used back then. I can marry an alcoholic. I can handle that. I'm an Al-Anon. That's fine. Don't worry about me. And of course, the road was difficult. It was extremely challenging. At one point, I I stopped going to my meetings and I went back to the meeting. I was going every day and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I sat down next to my favorite person to sit next to. And I said, "I'm so sorry I haven't been here." And he said, "Sweetheart, it's okay. It's you that needs it. I don't need you to be here. I'm going to recover either way." And he said it so lovingly that I woke up and realized, yeah, this is about me. It's not about pleasing other people. So over the months of our first year of marriage, my husband got worse and worse. And I was trying to figure out, do I stay? Do I go? Do I stay? Do I go? But I didn't want to leave. And I really wanted to learn the secrets of recovery so that I could help this man who I loved so much. And so I started to study Al-Anon, study the books that nobody was talking about in the meetings, but that were sitting on the table. And there was one from long, long ago in the 50s, I think. And the book itself taught me what to do. And I did it. And within a few days of my doing it, my husband went into treatment. And when he got out, he was speaking at a meeting one night. And he said, "You see that woman over there?" He invited me to come. "She's the reason that I'm in recovery." And I walked over to him and I said, "Don't you ever say anything like that again. I'll get kicked out of Al-Anon." Because, they said, it's not your business. Don't bug him. Leave him alone. But I had found in the original Al-Anons that they were very much involved with each other. You may hear the patter of little feet. Those are my puppies. And I would like someone to come and get them, but that isn't happening right now. So we're just going to let them chatter and wander around. Anyway, as I was saying, my significant other got better and did very, very well. And we had a wonderful life together. And about, I guess, 18 years later, everything started to fall. Really, after 12 years, everything started to fall apart. But it was a slow. First, there was porn on the internet. And then there was a little bit of gambling. And then there was drugs. And then, you always relapse on something other than your drug of choice. And we went down together. I was relapsing. He was relapsing. We had a teenager experimenting and life was very difficult. And I decided that I would get help. We both had fallen away from recovery. I got a spiritual director, a therapist, a sponsor, and the spiritual director told me that I should write down everything. I should ask in my writings, what is true? And all of a sudden, 50 things came out, and they were all the things over 5 years that I had seen as a decline in my husband, that I had been stuffing down and stuffing down and stuffing down. And I started to say them to him, just, "Honey, I noticed that you go out in the middle of the night. I noticed that the phone rings and you go in the other room," and on and on and on. "I noticed that the credit cards come and you take them away." I mean, just things that, how was I allowing these to go on? But seriously, I noticed 50 of them. And he's on the phone screaming. We were in different cities at that point. I had a job out of town. And he was screaming at me. And I said, "Sweetheart, I love you so much, but you can't scream at me." And I hung up the phone. And whenever we talked, and he would be doing something weird, like, for instance, one time it was early morning. I said, "Hi, how are you?" He said, "I'm good, just getting up." And he was clearly in the car driving down the highway from wherever he was. And I said, "Oh, honey, I hear you on the highway." "I am not on the highway. Let me share my list with you." And I started again, very lovingly, screaming, yelling, click. Anyway, to make a short story long, he came home. I was out of town. I came home and I said to him, "I love you so much. And I do not want to go through this whole thing again that we went through 18 years ago." By then it was 18 or 20 years. I can't even remember anymore, because his full blown relapse was about 5 years long. And it started at at about 18 years of recovery. And it went for 5 years. And during that time, we were I don't have to tell you. And it was bad. And I just started to, I said to him, sweetheart, I love you so much, but you have 1 month to tell me exactly what's going on. Is it gambling? Is it porn? Is it sex? Is it drugs? I really don't know, but it's yours to tell me. And you have a month. If you decide you don't want to get help after that month, I totally get it. I love you very much. We'll separate. If you decide you want to get help, I love you, but we're not being loving to each other anymore. So I will give it 1 year of devotion while you're on your path. And then we can decide if we're going to stay together. For 1 month, we were totally in different rooms, not talking. And he came at the end of that month and said, yeah, I'm ready to get help. And he went and he got help. He had been in the treatment field. He was a director. He was really helping a lot of people. So I was able to get him into a good program for him. And I said 6 months in the program, 6 months in, and here's the thing. I had a sponsor whispering in my ear, and now you're going to do this, and now you're going to do this. And she wouldn't whisper in my ear if I didn't want her to. As long as I was out there enabling, she would let me go and enable because it's my life, my business. Anyway, around the time that all this is happening and my husband's getting into recovery, I had a realization that I didn't want to be in my old field anymore, which was school administration. I wanted to be a life coach. And I soon realized that I wanted to work with families and that I was on, and my husband was in treatment by now, and I was on to something and I wanted to help other families do this. So I start working with families as a life coach, and they would say, what do we do? And I'd say, go to Al-Anon. And they'd say, go to hell. Excuse me. But that's what they'd say because they wanted me to fix it. I wasn't fixing anything. However, I realized that I needed to have something to give. And so I prayed about it a lot. I got some guidance. And out of that, over an 8-year period, came my program, the BALM, 12 principles, 7 steps, and a complete guide for families to be able to make a difference. First, get their lives back, and often rather quickly help their loved ones get theirs back. So it was definitely inspired by Al-Anon, but people call it Al-Anon on steroids. Why do they call it that? Because it's not just about get your life back, which Al-Anon is, in Al-Anon, you learn how to get your life back and you intuit how to help, because the focus isn't on helping. It's on not contributing to things getting worse. And a lot of that is pulling back and staying in your own lane. What I learned over the years is that staying in your own lane is part of it, but it's not enough. So in our program, we teach families, these are the things you do, these are the things you don't do. And over the course of time, families have begun to do these things, and we've seen remarkable results. Definitely the family gets well, and often the loved one does too. And it's with all different addictions, including gambling.
I think that's fabulous. From my background in the treatment side of things, I would do events or group nights where family members would come, and the treatment clients and their family members would all be in there together for an evening. And really what you said kind of rung true with some of my own experience, and that a lot of people have family who if they get some practical tips, tricks, advice, skills, etc., whatever, to heal themselves and also be helpful. They want to be supportive, they want to be helpful, but don't necessarily know what kind of support is actually helpful. And there are some very simple things that they can do. And that's kind of their two main goals. And often just equipping with a little bit of some communication skills, boundary setting, loving, etc.
That's it. You got
they are 100% on board and healing themselves in their way and allowing their loved one to heal in their way. And it becomes this
Right.
amazing, amazing kind of connective dynamic.
Absolutely. And the reason that we made our family program a full year long is we had a lot of people whose loved ones were in treatment. And when they were in treatment, they learned all these good things. But then they're home with them and what do I do now? So we have lots of information and transformative activities and exercises and support groups ongoing for a full year for our families. And it gives them the ability to have people to lean on as they're going through this process of growing. And often the families will hire one of our coaches as well to work with.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, your program, you just said it's like a year long, and the training programs are several months long. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the principles or steps that people learn that are useful or something they could take away with from today?
Absolutely. The first thing is, could I share our 7 C's? Al-Anon has 3 C's. You didn't cause it, can't control it, you can't cure it. And the 4th C, which went out of favor for a long time, but is coming back now, you don't have to contribute to it, the 4 C's. So in the BALM, we have 7 C's. You didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. You can contribute to recovery. And we believe that families are always contributing. You're either contributing to things getting worse, contributing to things getting better. You're not causing it, but you are contributing. And our whole program is teaching you how to contribute, just as you were saying, to things getting better. The 5th C, or the 5th C, is you are connected to your loved one on a level deeper than their disorder. And that's so important because families feel stigma and shame and they're told, get away from them. What do you have anything to do with them for? And we say, because you have something to do with them because they're a human being and no human being is perfect. And you love this human being. There's no shame there. You just need to learn a new way to relate so that you can keep your sanity and you can be there for them in a way that could potentially be helpful. And the 6th C is you can learn to communicate. And our program has within it the 7 steps to be a loving mirror, which is in essence a communication tool. And finally, you are always at choice. Choice is the key when it comes to family recovery. You can listen to this talk tonight or come into the BALM and say, oh, it's all very nice. You know what? I'm out of here. I'm having my own life. I love my husband, but he's driving me, to want to have problems myself and I'm out. That's a choice you're allowed to make. We invite people to make the choice on the basis of education rather than just, I can't stand it anymore. There's a big difference.
I love that. I love that. And you mentioned there's kind of, we've been talking about there's 2 sides of this. There's what I can do to preserve my own sanity, to heal and grow myself and help them. And you just talked about some of the things that are helpful, communication, boundaries, etc. What are some things a person can do for their own healing and recovery? And why is this important? And I gotta say,
thank you for asking that.
Yes.
What were you going to say? I didn't mean
someone worded this really well not too long ago for me. They said when people are looking to help a loved one, it never even occurs to them to Google help for themselves. Right?
It's all about
doing
the other.
For help for them. It doesn't occur to them that there's help out there.
That's right. That's right. And yet a lot of people have been indoctrinated to believe it's his problem. It's her problem. It's not my problem. I don't have a problem. They have a problem. Like you said at the beginning, family recovery is for the whole family. So, what can you do to help yourself? May I start with a little story? So when my husband had his relapse and I was a principal of a school. And I would do my job. And whenever I would have a family that I was helping in my office and everybody would leave my office and I'd sit down and sob. And then I'd wipe up my tears and more people would come in, or I'd go out and do the halls or whatever, walk the halls. One day I got caught and a mom knocked at my door and saw my tears and said, "Could we talk?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I think I can help you. I don't know what the problem is, but something's very wrong. And I know you're under a lot of stress." I practice mindfulness-based stress reduction. I have a wonderful teacher, and I bet she could help you. And I took an 8-week course in MBSR. We actually, on our website, have a free MBSR course offered by a certified teacher. You can go on one of our websites, BALM Family Recovery. And if you go into the resource section there, you'll see under BALM fans and friends, you'll see, it's called Palouse Meditation. And I think he's out your way. Anyway, it's a wonderful course. I took it in person, one-on-one. I was a serious case. But what happened to me was, all of a sudden, I had peace. It took work every day of practicing meditation, but I became peaceful and I became able to change jobs. I became able to speak sanely to my husband. I became able to handle challenges. That's amazing. I became able to decide to be a life coach. And when I put my program together, mindfulness, we call it be the peace you wish to see in the world. Everybody thinks that out there's got to give them peace. And when you're living with people who are struggling with use disorders, they can't give you peace. They can't give themselves peace. So our job is to be the peace ourselves. And on that basis, to observe what we see our loved one do and say, and to deal with the emotional upset that occurs as a result of objectively really looking at the facts, not going into denial. And then we have a communication series of way that we teach people to communicate once they're at peace. But without the peace, you can't be very helpful to your loved one. So we invite you to start with being the peace, and we teach you how to do that.
I love that. I love that. I mean, there's just so much power in just taking a minute. Our world is so busy and our lives can be so chaotic, and we've got this much going and then 50 emails and this, that, and the other. That being able to give ourselves permission to just slow down.
Yes, it's fair. I mean, meditate. Absolutely. We have a lot of meditations on our YouTube channel. Yeah. Maybe you do too. We're just, and I studied MBSR. We teach all different kinds of meditation, and we invite people to find their meditation wherever they find it. Just find it. Find some way to calm yourself down so that you can live a life that is enjoyable, regardless of what's happening in it. And it is possible.
That's fantastic. And this ties back to what you said earlier about the family member always having their own choices to make. But when once they've done some work and are in a state of peace, the choices we make in a state of peace often tend to be choices we feel better about long term than the choices we tend to make in a state of emotionally heightened, stressed activity. We may make a decision in that moment, and then we might regret it later.
That's right.
The road, right? That's right. And so even if they do decide later, I need to end the relationship, making that from a state of peace and calm and having time to think it through and put our brains in that state can be very, very helpful for them taking care of themselves, not just now.
Yes.
But in the long-term future.
Right. And of course, self-care goes far beyond being the peace.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's the beginning.
Gosh, that's fantastic. All right, I've got one more question for you. What have you learned from others in your years of training and supporting families through recovery? So you shared a lot about what you learned from your own personal experience, trial and error, and things getting thrown at you. But I'm also curious, in your years of working with other professionals and families and things you've gleaned from their experiences in doing this work.
Yes, I've learned so much from my clients, so much from my teachers. I think the biggest shock for me, when I went to coach training school, and I went to a school similar to mine that teaches recovery and coaching, was the stages of change. I had no idea. I thought your loved one is sick, they go to treatment, they come out. That's how it was with my husband the first time. He was fine. There was nothing. And then I learned about the stages of change. That change happens in stages, that sometimes to break a habit, you have to do it. You have to go through a process 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe even 10 times before it sticks. And it was like, oh, that's why so many people have such a hard time. Well, if the families can really deeply understand the stages of change and learn how to have motivational interviewing conversations, that was the other thing that really stuck with me. So those are things that I learned. I'd say the most profound things that I learned in terms of teaching to others. And of course, those are integrated in our programs. From a family member, I've learned that every family member has their own path, and you meet people where they are. One person may learn from other people's experiences, just like the loved one who has the addiction could learn by seeing other people and not have to go as far. And some family members have to go all the way to the point of jumping off a cliff with their loved one before they get it. And, just it really taught me a lot. I also have learned from good boundary setters. I was not a good boundary setter in the beginning. That was not something. What else have I learned? I've learned about the importance of not setting a boundary until you're determined to stick to it. Because if you do, it's worse than never having set it at all. And that was one of the most important lessons that I've learned and that I've watched other families learn.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Since you mentioned the stages of change, I'll put a little plug in here. You kind of reminded me I wanted to do this anyway. Our Focus on the Future conference is coming up in Vancouver, Washington, if anybody wants to travel to it. But one of the guest speakers is Dr. Carlo Di Clemente.
Wow.
Lovingly known as the father of the stages of change and trans-theoretical model. And so he will actually be speaking at our conference and talking about the stages of change. So I'm a big fan. I'm very excited. We've got a host of other presenters and amazing topics I won't get into, but please check out the website, everyone, if you're interested in signing up for that. But fantastic. Thank you so much. Did you have any other last words, advice, words of encouragement?
Well, I'm looking forward to having you come into the BALM community to talk about the stages of change for problem gamblers and families of problem gamblers. Such an important thing to look at these stages from the perspective of different people going through different things. And I'm very appreciative of your willingness to do that. I guess what I'd like to say is that, not only is family recovery possible, recovery is possible. Absolutely. And again, you're always contributing to things getting worse or better. Whether you use our program or another program, get into something where you get good, strong information, where you have a transformation process and support. What I learned over the years is support is wonderful, but support isn't enough. And when you only have support, sometimes it just becomes a lot of venting. And it's, oh, I feel for you. Wait, Am I doing the right thing? Is this helpful? Get help that helps.
Absolutely. Thank you. And on that note, for where you can find help, I'll remind you about the blog post for this episode. We have the link to the Be a Loving Mirror site, as well as programs like Gam-Anon, the Smart Recovery Family Program, the Gambling Family and Friends website, and Recovering Couples Anonymous, and several other support programs and even treatment programs for the family. So please check those out, because you do have some options out there you might not have even thought of or knew that existed. So we want to share those with you. And we hope that this was helpful, and you'll tune in next time.
Thank you.